Mhm. And so now let's just jump right in with the slideshow, and then we'll talk about what portions of all those projects that I'm sharing with you, which ones we should do today. So let's get the PowerPoint. And now it's in the way of the screen. So share screen. And there it is. Well, it's a messy. Hang on a second here. I've got lots open. And then bars in the way. We discovered recently that Zoom has done something that's created the bars that you have, your control bars. My control bars show up on your screen as gray blocks. And so I have to keep moving them around to keep them out of your way. Not sure why that's happening, but so here we go. All right. And so I'll be moving us around, trying to keep us out of the screen there. Let me know if it's blocking some of the words. And so right off the bat, let's just define what a legend is. And so from Webster's dictionary, it's a story from the past that's believed by many people, but cannot be proved to be true. And I have to move us again. Let's see if I can find a place to dock us, maybe down there. Okay, so I just want to start out, as I often do, with some really great books and resources that can be inspiration for your sketchbooks. This is one of my new favorites. It's called Floriography, and I've actually got a page or two in my sketchbook currently devoted to this subject, where there's a legend or a story about pretty much every flower. And sometimes they're same from book to book, and sometimes they're quite different. It depends sometimes what era they come from and what culture they come from. I have a Celtic background, and so a lot of where my stories come from are the Celtic world, but medieval sources even have lots of stuff about this. Another book is Mary's Flowers. A couple of years ago, actually it's been a decade ago, I did a whole 2-week or 1-week seminar over in Leavenworth in a religious environment and taught all about Mary's garden. Mary's garden is portrayed throughout history. Medieval illuminated manuscripts have her gardens often, and there's a lot of legend around what was in her garden. And so that's a great book for this kind of thing. The Medieval Flower Book is yet another one, and it actually has some of the images from some of the ancient medieval books that had the stories along with them. And you'll have this PDF, it's already on the Padlet page, and so you can go back and get the authors and the book names if you're interested. This is one that a lot of people already know about, but it's about a watercolor artist, and she worked her way through an entire year in her sketchbook, and this is the results of that. And then this one, I just like this book. It's really interesting for my geeky mind. It's a whole anatomy of color, and each page is set up with all the variations where somebody cataloged all these colors, and then they have names attached to them. And so it was done in 1814. And this is an example. So the one I've circled there is reddish white. It's the color of an egg of a gray linnet and the back of the Christmas rose. And it's the mineral that it looks like is porcelain. And so every color is documented in that way. I don't know why it appeals to me so much, but it just really does. So that's a great book to play with. And so now on to the legends. First of all, there's mistletoe. And I've provided a page for each of these for you, but this one I've also put in the scientific name. And this is an ancient Norse tradition that believed that mistletoe was sacred to the goddess of love and beauty, Frigga, the mother of Balder, the god of summer sun. Balder dreamed he would be murdered, but Frigga roamed the earth, pleading for the promise of all the birds and animals and plants to not participate in the killing of her son. So mistletoe is a parasite, and it has no roots on the earth, and so it was overlooked. Loki, Balder's enemy, saw the oversight and he formed an arrow of mistletoe and it killed Balder. The berries of the mistletoe represent the inconsolable tears of Frigga, who mourned her son's death. And the gods took pity on her. I put pithy, that's interesting. Pity on her and brought her son back to life. Frigga was so grateful, she decreed mistletoe a plant of peace, and all who passed under it should exchange a kiss. Let's see if this will turn to the next page. And Amaryllis, the legend behind that is that a love-struck maiden, desperate to win the love of a cold-hearted and oh so handsome Alteo, pierced her own heart with a golden arrow. And she visited his cottage every day, leaving a trail of drops of blood. On the 13th day, beautiful scarlet flowers bloomed where the drops of blood had been. Alteo was enamored by this, and Amaryllis's heart was healed. I love these stories. So the poinsettia is a euphorbia. I'm deadly allergic to euphorbias, so I keep my distance. It's the sap. The sap is also the formulation that is used for latex gloves, which I'm also allergic to. Poinsettias got their name from Dr. Joel Poinsett, the first United States ambassador to Mexico, who was also an amateur botanist, and he brought these bright red star-shaped plants here to the United States in 1825. They were prized by the Aztecs. They represent purity, good cheer, and are believed to bring mirth to celebrations. They also bring a story of a young child in Mexico who went to visit a nativity scene, but he had no gift to bring. The child grabbed a handful of bright green weeds and laid them beside the manger. During the service, the handful of weeds transformed into beautiful red star-shaped leaves. The child's gift given from a pure heart was an act of purity. And so the hellebore. I'm also very, very allergic to hellebores. On a cold December night, everyone was coming to see the new Savior. They brought him gifts and presents. The 3 wise men brought valuable gifts of myrrh, frankincense, and gold and offered them to baby Jesus. A young shepherdess, Madelon, came to see the babe, but she was very poor and she didn't have anything to offer the child. Feeling helpless, she started weeping at the sight of all the wonderful gifts. She had searched in vain for flowers to bring, but there was not even a single bloom to be found. An angel outside the door was watching and knew about her fruitless search. He took pity on her. He gently brushed aside the snow at her feet, and where her tears had fallen were white winter roses with pink-tipped petals. He whispered into her ear that the roses were more valuable than all the other gifts, as they were made out of pure love. The maiden joyfully gathered the flowers and offered them to the Holy Infant. And then my block of our faces is in the way. The maiden offered them to the Holy Infant. The Christmas rose has come to symbolize hope and love. So let's see what's next. Okay, then this one is just saying we better get started. So we'll end the search, the share here, and talk about what's on these tutorials. There's 3 of them. The first one is a blotted ink drawing, if I remember correctly. And it's really fun, and it's a great way to start and something we can do in class. So let me get to that. And in the meantime, we'll look at what you need. You'll just need a little piece of tracing paper, some ink. Hang on a second. Let me just get to it here. I think it's all listed in the video. Well, maybe there. This one. That's part 2. Maybe that's, well, I think it's the blotted ink. I might be wrong. Oh no, poinsettias. This is the blotted ink. I think we should start with this one, and then we'll go to the poinsettias. And so this, I did several versions of it, but the one in the Padlet with the images, the one that had, it came from a card, and it's got some berries and some holly and stuff on it. If you can have that handy, we'll work with that. And I think I'll just get started here and I'll stop it so that you have time to do whatever you need to do to work through this. And then the second one, I'll just show you what we have in store. The second one is about creating a page with poinsettias and amaryllis, and it's a full page spread. It's lengthy. The it only takes 25 minutes on the video, but it'll take you a little longer. The first one takes 47 minutes, and it's a couple blotted ink drawings. And then finally, the last one, I'm just going to put on Padlet. There's no way we'll get to it. This is an entire spread that I did. It's unnarrated, but it's of botanicals, and the story of holly and ivy, or from there's a song about the holly and the ivy, and it's all incorporated. It shows you the whole process of laying everything out, painting it. It's not narrated. It's just the image, but you can watch along and work on your own page from that, and I'll attach that so you'll have that. So let's get started with this one here. I need to share sound. There. And then once it starts, let me know if you can hear it. Nothing yet.
In this segment, we're going to talk about a really fun.
I have to stop and fix that. My sound is messed up somehow here. Try to fix this. It sounds really, really, really loud on my end, and I know you can adjust it on yours, but.
Project called Ink Blot, or Blotted Ink Drawing, and I'm just now finishing up a spread here that I've already done with this method. This is blotted ink, and we're going to do that in just a moment here. I'm just finishing up a little bit here where I'm putting a few more finishing touches around the script part, or the text part of this page. This page has got an awful lot of writing, and it's because there's a lot of stories about mistletoe, but in this case it's probably okay. I don't usually use this many words, but it was kind of necessary, and I wanted to find a way to illustrate this by just adding a little bit of a border here. So with India ink and a regular dip pen, we will go to the next project, which will be a fun one, where we'll be using a piece of deli wrap. So it's waxed on one side. It feels like it's waxed on both, but there is definitely one side that's a lot slicker. That's the side we're going to be working on. I've taken a drawing and traced around it in pencil just so I can know where I want to put my ink when I flip it over. The drawing doesn't have to be very specific, and the less detail, the better. You can get too much detail in, and you can see it's pretty random how the ink will land, and so if you have a lot going on, it's going to be a lot more difficult. So I'm going to cap this green ink off, and as soon as I'm certain that that's dry, I can turn the page. Actually, let's do this one on a card. I think that would be fun to have a little mixed media card here. So what I want to do is tape this.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop it long enough for you to find. Do you have deli wrap? I think some of you had classes with me before and we've used it. Okay. So I think that some tissue paper, tracing paper, doesn't work particularly well, but wax paper might be okay. Sherry, do you remember? Because I think you were one that ran into some trouble with not having that.
You know, I think the wax paper I think the wax paper, you're right, was the one that seemed to work.
Okay.
But
so
I don't remember. Yeah, I think wax paper.
And I'm sorry, I totally forgot that this was on deli wrap. I was thinking it was on tracing paper, but I remember now you can't. It has to, one side has to be waxed. Let me also take this out of the view form it's in right now and go straight to YouTube, because I think that's what's causing the latency in the image. So let me stop that. Let's see. Quickly.
Lori, I missed that we were supposed to have a dip pen and ink. Is there something else I can use to achieve effect?
And so you don't have any kind of a way with regular ink to.
Well, I have a bunch of ink in like bottles, with droppers.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you could do it with. Do you have a bamboo stick, like a
I used to.
Yeah. Or trying to think. My brain's anything that's like pointy.
like a chopstick, like
A
an old
chopstick. Yes.
takeout chopstick or something.
Yes.
Hmm.
Or
I'll go
an
forage
orange wood
around.
stick,
Okay.
you know, like,
Let me quick go do that while you're doing what you're doing.
yeah, I'm going to shift and try and make this work with um, YouTube. I think that's what the problem is. I think that's what I found last time. Okay. Yeah, view on YouTube and see what happens, and I'll stop it.
Lori, what kind of ink are you using?
I'm using just plain India ink. Hang on, now I got to find us again so I can see faces. Okay. I'm using regular India ink. So
And it's
like
colored?
mine, I used black,
Okay.
but you could use other colors. You could probably use green.
So the
It's
color
the
is something else.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that comes later.
Okay.
The consistency is what's most important. You know, it's
Okay.
got a lot of saturation, but it's very thin and liquid. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter the brand. I think I might just use Higgins, you know, just a really old form of India ink. But sometimes I also pick up what's the one that goes in the pen that you load? Um, it totally escapes me. Yeah, carbon black.
Oh, yeah.
That'll work too.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So now I'm going to just go and play a little bit of it so you can see where you're headed for. But I think I need to wait for Barbara to get back. I mean, Catherine to get back. And then that way I know that she can see it too. I should have, I feel very bad about not putting deli wrap on there because that's going to make it difficult. But let's see here. Barbara, do you have deli wrap?
No, I don't even know where I'd get it. It's
Okay.
I have wax paper and I have a lot of ink and ink pens. So
Okay, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And if you know, it's about the process, and if you get it, at least work through the process. If it doesn't work as well, at least you know if you're going to like it or not, and then you can go order it. I actually got my deli wrap on Amazon, and I bought 2 boxes thinking I would go through it pretty fast. That was 4 years ago. I still have 2 boxes, but it was called cabinet wax, Kabinet. It didn't cost very much. And I actually use it in the kitchen all the time too, to separate layers of cookies and stuff. It's great. So let's see. As soon as Catherine pops back in, we'll jump in and go to this. So if you have printed out that image, you can just trace it, and I have to run the YouTube video to remember which side of the paper you trace it onto. It's got to be either the waxy or the not waxy. And I believe it's on the waxy side. Essentially what's happening is we're going to put this ink on a little bit at a time. We're not going to put the ink all over the entire image. We're going to do it a little at a time. And then we'll have it taped up above our paper, or in my case, a note card. And each time we put a little on, then we'll drop that deli wrap down and tap on it, and it'll leave some ink. It's sort of hit or miss. It makes a really charming image when you're done. It looks sort of vintage. So we'll give Catherine another minute or two here to get back. And if you have some masking tape or something that can anchor that down once we get it ready to go, anchored down really well to your surface, it'll really help, because that way every time you put a little more ink on it, it'll land in the same place and you won't have to keep trying to re-register it every time. So, but whatever it is that you use to tape it down, try and find something that's not going to rip the surface of your sketchbook or your card. So let me go back to that video, and Catherine will be back shortly. See if I can move it forward a little bit here.
Lori, while we're waiting, I had a question. I was watching that video. You know, last year I went on the search for the pink stuff, and it seemed like that website didn't have it anymore that was referenced last year. I don't know. Did you find it recently? Like I don't know if Jerry's is still in business. He may not be, but if
Ah,
not, is there other sizing that you would recommend, or is that kind of your
no.
go-to?
I've got several that I've gotten over the years, and they're sitting up in the cabinet still because they don't work very well. I really
Ah,
prefer Jerry's. If you don't find it there, you might find it on the ink site. Hang on a second, I'll think of it here.
yeah,
Um,
because it did seem like maybe I found it at what are those guys that do ink?
I know, I'm trying to
Um,
think. John,
calligraphy.
yeah, John. Oh, I just got an email from him. Why my brain today? Black
Uh,
something. Anyway, I'll before we're done, I will get that information. Also look up and see what happened to Jerry's because he's the guy that makes it.
Yeah, it
So,
seemed like I went to that site and it just said you can't get it here. The site
okay.
didn't exist anymore unless they've reestablished it, maybe. But it
Hmm.
did seem like I maybe found it on that ink, the calligraphy site where they have a lot of
I'm just
calligraphy.
Googling it right now. Jerry's pink stuff came right up on my, I didn't even get as far as R.
Oh, good. Maybe it's
Um,
back again. Because I would like to learn how to do that.
well, I just found it at Golden Leaf Products. And you guys, what she's
Oh,
talking
that
about,
is it. Yes, I remember because then I was like, "Oh, which golden leaf do I buy now?
yeah,
What
no, it
and
was,
what?" So that was my other question. I do remember this now. It's been a few years. Um, so what color of gold leaf do you recommend? I mean, they have
it's,
all stuff on
yeah,
there.
I usually just buy, I didn't realize there were a lot of colors. Sometimes you can get bags of scraps of a lot of different kinds of metal that produce
Oh,
that. But just a basic gold leaf is what I've always used. I think that it's by the carat too, like 14 carat or whatever. It's not cheap. It's actually sheets of
uh-oh.
gold. So what she's talking about, guys, is this stuff called Jerry's pink stuff. And it's what you lay down when you're going to put gold leaf. It's the best formulation for that. And it's very specific. And for a minute there, my heart was racing because she was thinking it was not available anymore. But I think it is. It just might not have been
Yeah,
the same link that I had before.
it is. Yeah.
So, Catherine, you're back. So we're going to go ahead now and
Okay, go
start
ahead.
this video. All right, let's get back to that. If I can figure out where that was, it's probably on there. And then, so here's that website we were just talking about. There's Jerry's pink stuff. But that's not why I'm here. We're going to look at the video. This one from within YouTube and see if that helps the resolution at all, I hope. All right, and we got to move it forward because we should be right about.
Okay, we're
Oh
gonna
no, that's not the one.
rows of ultramarine would be
I have to go back.
handy at some.
Sorry. This is the most klutzy I've been ever, I think, today. I don't know what's happened. Okay, stop that. Let's start this one again. Jeez. I'm so glad you guys are also patient. I'm backing it up to where we were.
Run of the mill out loud. Thank you for bearing.
A little bit further. At least the resolution's better. I'm happy about that. All right.
Is tape
I just wanted to roll it back to where it talks about which side to draw that drawing on, so you can be doing that.
this
And these ridiculous little bars, I have to keep moving them around.
so that the page.
Okay.
Actually, let's do this one on a card. I think that would be fun to have a little mixed media card here. So what I want to do is tape this so that the waxed side, the side that doesn't have the drawing on it, will be face down because
That's what I was after right there. So if you take your piece of paper, if it's waxed, the waxed side should be up. Draw the drawing on the non-waxy side, right?
the drawing on it will be face down because I'm going to be inking and flipping, inking and flipping. So I want to make a hinge here. And depending on.
I have to play that again because it seems to me that I got it backwards again for you. Sorry.
So what I want to do is tape this so that the waxed side.
Okay. Draw your drawing on the unwaxed side with pencil. Tape it down with the wax towards the sketchbook, and then we'll be ready to go. I'm going to watch you guys and let me know when you've got that far, and then we'll roll it. And that drawing doesn't have to be very good, just like I said in the preface there. Because of what we're doing, the ink is going to ball up and glob up in certain places more than others. And if you've got a lot of detail going on there, make this go away. Hang on, there's something that wants me to, yeah, close, go away. Oh, don't you love technology? Go away, don't show again. There. If you have a lot of really close together detailed lines, your ink is just going to mush all together and you're not going to have very good success with it. So the less lines, the better. It doesn't have to be meticulous. This isn't really a botanical illustration or botanical representation. It's more about the technique and the impression that it leaves. So if you're ready, let me know. Thumbs up. We've done this one. I think we've done it a couple times and other times. I just really like this technique. It's fast. Roma, you look like you're ready.
Well, I just tried drawing. I don't have deli paper, but I have wax paper, and I couldn't draw on the wax paper. So I'm just doing a watercolor version of it, and I'll get some deli paper and try it
Okay,
later.
and try it later. Okay. That's totally fine. It's just fun to watch what happens. And Barbara, are you set?
You know, wax paper. Never mind. Wax paper has wax on both sides, so I'll just play with it, and I just want to see what you're trying to get at here. I've just been drawing watercolors too. So.
Okay, I think we should just go here. I don't see Catherine. Oh, I do. Now I do. My bar.
You have to scroll down.
Okay, got it. All right, let's go. Let me move this stupid box again.
Face down, because I'm going to be inking and flipping, inking and flipping.
Okay.
So I want to make a hinge here. And depending on your handedness, I always do everything all backwards, but I think I might hinge it on this side. Let's just see how that works. So I did discover on my other one in my sketchbook that the tape actually removed some of the paper when I went to move it off. I had Scotch tape, so this time I'm going to use some artist tape and just kind of tape it down. I want to make sure that I've got it, actually. So do know that your image is going to be backwards of what you drew, unless you flip it. And it looks like I have flipped it. Yes. So it won't be backwards. Yes, and I want my type to be over here. Okay, so that was a lot of thinking out loud. Thank you for bearing with me. Let's tape this down in exactly the place that we want it to be. Move that over just a little bit. And I'm going to tape the whole thing down so the card quits moving around. Now I can easily, I didn't have so many bandages on my finger, I could easily flip it back and forth. You want to make sure that nothing is covered up, so that when you flip it back and forth, it lands exactly where you want it and doesn't move each time. It might move a little bit. This is not meant to be super precise. You can't be super precise because it's blotted ink. So I have this is Indian ink. Normally it says India ink. This one is just plain run-of-the-mill ink, and something to put this on so I don't dribble ink somewhere that I don't want it. I'm going to leave the cap off because I'm going to be in and out of that ink a lot. Now, I'm going to just dip my pen in. Probably should have a piece of scrap paper nearby so that you can test. Okay, so what you want to do is work a little at a time. I don't get in a rush. Actually, I think I want a little bit of scrap paper underneath that so I can see my design. There we go. So I'm just going to take the ink onto the waxed surface. Now know that it's going to want to bead up a little bit because it's waxed, but the wax will keep it from drying up so that when you flip it over in a minute here, there's some ink. This is the transfer method. Let's just put it that way. It's transferring the design on, but part of the transfer method is artistic and creative. Now, don't rub, just gently tap, and it's gonna be hit or miss, and sometimes there'll be blobs depending on how much ink you put on that paper and also on the type of paper. So this might be different. The reception of that ink might be different than the last thing. But see, it's sort of blobby, and that's exactly what I wanted. Now, if you want precision and absolute perfection, this may not be the technique for you. But in this case, I'm trying to break from some of the need to have that and just have a little fun. And it gives a really nice image. It's just a different technique. So don't do too much at a time because it will want to dry on you. So I think I'll probably flip it right now. Flip and tap. Now, it wasn't happy with the fact that it didn't release right here, so I'm going to do that part a little bit more ink and try again. And so I'm just tapping gently, very gently tapping those areas that I just put ink on. And flip. And so I'm happy with that, and I'm going to move on to the next part. So this is the process, and then we'll colorize that later.
I'll just run it a little bit longer and then I'll stop. And now it's sped up, obviously. I don't go that fast. Just let you see a little bit more of this and then see if there's any questions. And okay, stop it for a second and move you guys back up so I can see you. So does that make sense? And if you're trying it with wax paper anyway, is it working at all? I know you can't draw on that side, but anyway, this is the method, and you see the result, and it's charming, and it works really well for something like a card, I think. And then we'll colorize it. So I think I'll just go ahead and run it because there's really nothing more specific beyond that. I'll just let my tape run out here so you can see it in the end, and you can work if you're working on it or not. But it'll get us moving along here so we can get some other stuff on this done. The biggest key is just to work it a little at a time, because even, I mean, ink seems like it takes forever to dry when you're trying to get your hand through it, but it really doesn't take forever to dry. It dries pretty darn quick. So you'll want to only do a little bit and then stop, flip, tap. And I mean, gently tap. If you push, you'll get really fat lines, but I mean, and then randomly, that's okay, but to get this sort of hit or miss look, you just kind of tap. You can see there my one branch got really big, and now you can see there my hair. I hate when that happens. My head's always popping in the way there.
Lori, what size nib is that you're using?
Oh boy.
Do you know
I do not
what
know.
kind of a nib it is? Oh, well,
it's just a regular split. It's not got the little round thing at the end. It's a regular pointy split.
Regular point. Okay.
Yeah. I just love the way that looks. And that last little bit I saw where some of it didn't quite land. it didn't, really impress very well. So you can always go back. Since you've got it so well registered with being taped down like that, you can go back and re-ink an area, and it'll land on top of wherever you put your last mark. So that's the end of it right there. And then once I get to the end of it, you have to let it dry completely, but you could even blow dry it just to get the ink, because it won't take very long. And then I add the color. There's a big blob.
All right, there's my blotted ink drawing. I'll let that dry. I had so much fun on the first one, I just have to do another one. So here I'm working on a little hellebore, and same drill.
This image is also on Padlet right now. It's the flower is right next to on an image right next to a nativity scene. It was just, for whatever reason, they were hooked together, and I didn't take the time to separate them. But just one big hellebore, and then I think I just added leaves to it. But this one's super quick.
Drawing on the reverse side of it, on putting ink down on the waxy portion of my drawing, flipping it and tapping it gently to transfer the ink.
And now this is sped up again. So that, washing these will give you time to work on yours if you're doing this right now. And then you can always come back to this. If you decide that you like this and you want to get some deli wrap, you can always come back to this. So, I wasn't even very careful. I just kind of got the gist of it. You can tell it's a hellebore, more or less. And then when I add color, it kind of really makes it become more hellebore-ish. And I don't even mind those blobs. It's fine. Okay.
Alrighty. I've put out a couple of my very, very old Dr. P.H. Martin's Radiant watercolors.
And so I'll stop it long enough to say that's what I use to color this with. If you don't have Dr. P.H. Martin's Radiant inks, which I have from 23 years ago, you can use watercolor, you could use marker, you can use whatever you can that's got a vibrant color to it, because you really, in these, you really want like a pure, beautiful alizarin crimson, or you want your colors to be really brilliant, if at all possible. And I think that you probably could use gouache or something, but then you're going to start flattening things out. And I like that transparency. So here's what I did with Radiant ink. You can use whatever you want.
There's concentrated watercolors and inks, and just the colors in this very limited palette. And I'm going to just drop the colors in. They're quite intense, doesn't need much, and we're just trying to put a little bit of color in here. This brush might be a little small, but let's start with it. I'm picking up the olive green that I have. I'm just kind of dropping it in here.
Like coloring book style.
Float in. I may want to pick up, I have a little, I think it's pumpkin or saddle brown, just to vary these greens a little bit. A little hooker's green. But I'm just about tinting things. I don't really want to put a lot of detail or time and trouble into it. It's just to put some color down in this little drawing.
So, seriously, just think coloring book. You're just dropping some color down to give it more context.
You can kind of, dip into two different colors at a time, or sort of hit and miss. I'm trying not to be too specific about how I put the color down.
Sometimes
and if it doesn't quite reach the edge, that's okay too. It's real, just suggestive of the colors and the way that this would look.
And if you're stuck for palette, I think I gave you a lot of references. You could use colors from the image.
So the pieces that I've done so far are from the mistletoe. I'll vary my green when I get up into the holly, but for now I'm just doing these mistletoe leaves. So I'm just trying to pick out where those are. And for the most part, I can do them in one stroke, sort of lay down a heavy pressure and pull off into a lighter stroke. But that gets it just sort of hit and miss. Put it down here on the stems. And I think I've just about gotten all the mistletoe ones. And so now I'm going to go and I'm going to switch it up and try and get a greener, more Kelly green sort of color, holly colored. I'm just adding a little bit of the radiant green or jungle green. And I'm putting that where the holly is. Trying to be a little bit darker up close to things that are causing shadow. And then adding a little water and dragging that out to the tips.
Right there, and just mention that. So in this case, before in the mistletoe leaves, I was just using my brush, and if you put more pressure, it got to the fat end, and if I pull out the pressure, it gets to the pointy end. And sometimes I didn't even go to the black line. I was just kind of hit or miss, and I was using the colorations I saw in that old vintage card that image came from. Now that I'm in the ivy part, the holly part, I'm laying my very intense green right up underneath where the berries are because they're in shadow. But then I'm putting water way out at the tip and pulling it in towards the center, and it's letting it flow, kind of hit or miss, to match that line width in the background. And I'll just play that a little bit more and then see if you want to have time to play, or if you just want to watch. We can keep moving.
In some cases, not all the way to the tip. Let it kind of vary where it wants to be varied. If that made any sense at all. Probably not.
And now it's sped up again, so I'm painting very, very fast. Or maybe not, it's sped up.
Quite dark in this area where all the berries and things sort of converge. Now, in the area where there's white berries, I'm probably not going to do much more. I might tint them, but we'll see.
So the mistletoe berries are actually white.
These radiant watercolors are so intense and beautiful, but you can get too much of a good thing if you're not careful.
Sherry, if you were just in Northern California, you probably saw mistletoe hanging off all the trees. So anyway, this kind of gives you the idea, and it could be used for a holly wreath or you just could do all kinds of stuff like this for Christmas cards and things. It's so quick.
I'm going to let this area dry a little bit and bring in some more of the blue or green. I'm not happy with that brown. Now, the berries, we'll have to let this dry a little bit before we go too much further, but I do want to put just a little shadow side on each of the white berries, and I think what I'll use is, let's see, maybe I'll stick with that olive, but I'm going to use it very watery. Hardly any ink, mostly water, and just come and do the shadow side of some of these with just a little shading.
Sure, you don't need much, just enough to give it some depth so you can see what berry's on top of what berry, but it's just almost imperceptible, the difference between white and what I picked up and used for shadow there. Don't need much. And you could just as easily have done this and then use completely random colors that had nothing to do with the holly, just to be a very interesting graphic.
And I'm also noticing they have they each have like a little belly button.
The
It's a tiny little dot.
Technical name.
So put those in wherever I see them. And as soon as that's dry, we can put the red berries in. Let's go back with some green here. I'm going to pick up some more of that jungle green. It's a little bit too brown in that one area for my liking. Although I do plan to put in some metallic gold, so it would work. But I want to have it more green here.
What I love about these radiant inks is they're so transparent. You can layer them.
Let's see if we like the red. I have the scarlet, which is a little on the bluish red side, and I like it. I'll probably add a little yellow to it, or pumpkin, that browny orange, but let's start with this. Just lay down a basic layer of the red, and then we'll add a couple darker colors on for shading. Leave a little shadow in some areas, a little highlight in others. Come back in a moment with that orange and pop these a little bit.
See, that really brightens it up. Putting a little yellow or orange in there just really makes them stand out. So
that pumpkin orange does work really well in this red, I think.
You know,
and that's probably all I'll do except for some shadow in a moment, but let's go ahead and get these down here.
So now I essentially have two colors on my brush. I got a little bit of pumpkin, a little bit of red, and it kind of intermingles. It's very hit or miss. I'm leaving highlights. But it just takes so little effort.
You could use regular watercolor. You could leave it black and white. You could stipple. There's a lot of different things you could do, but I just love this intensity of this.
So Sherry, you're in your house now. You made it back safe and sound. That's miraculous.
And now I'm going to bring in this color. I think it was called mahogany, but it's actually kind of a, no, that's saddle brown. Where'd the mahogany one go? That's okay for the darkest dark. So there's a little ring of dark, dark, dark in there. A dot of it here and here. This one's completely like that.
Careful you don't get them too
just wherever
rotten
I see it,
looking.
I'm bringing in this saddle brown or mahogany or whatever it is. It's a dark reddish brown.
Almost calligraphic lines. You just, put dots or little swirls or whatever, but it's just like a hint at what it's supposed to be. It's shorthand. We're painting in shorthand.
And some of these have belly buttons. And I think that's all I'm going to do. Now, with the same saddle brown, I think I'll highlight some of the, not highlight, I'll darken some of the veins and some of the other characteristics of the holly. Just a wee bit. And some of the really dark shadowed areas right up against those white berries, just to give it some depth.
You just have to be careful. This is
accentuate some of these points.
One of these places where you got to know when to stop. That's always the hard part, right? Knowing when to quit.
I see that there's a couple little red spots in the mistletoe right here. Right here. And now I want to bring in the gold. I want some metallic.
Yeah, stop it for just a second. Is anybody really painting right along with, or should I keep going?
I just finished doing all my blotting. It's drying right now. So I'm okay to keep going because I get the gist of what you're doing.
Okay, that's what I thought. It's pretty simple, and you can always come back. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm using metallic. Now, this metallic that I have is one of my favorites. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what you have to use. Anything you have that's metallic gold, even if it's just a gold gel pen. This is the Fine Tech, I believe, looked like it. And I love the consistency. One thing to know if you are using Fine Tech, I have found that you put a little water and you put a little water and you think you're painting with it at its true consistency. Nah, you have to keep putting water and stirring. Putting water and stirring takes a while to activate it, and then it gets gooey, and then it gets much, much more effective. So here we go with gold.
So I've got this. What is the name of this?
Thank you for sharing that, because I was experimenting with these just before class, looking, figuring out a palette, and the colors did not look very nice. So I guess I didn't activate them enough. So you really have to saturate them. So thanks for pointing that out. Yeah.
Yep, and it gets gooey almost to the consistency of pudding.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind. That'll help.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, great.
It took me a while to figure that out, by the way.
An amazing, brilliant gold. I'm just going to put it in a couple places, primarily on these little points, the tips here.
Another thing
just
where
a little bit.
A little goes a long ways.
Maybe a couple veins.
Sort of to pick up the highlights.
I like it.
It was shiny
because it just adds to the whole story about drawing blood and crown of thorns. It adds a lot to the imagery.
As soon as you put that on the points, it sort of makes it look like the holly, like bent up and, came to a point. It's interesting how well it picks up the light, or gives the effect of picking up light. And not every point. I put it down on the stems there, and then I think I remember putting it on some of the berries. Can't remember.
All right. I think we have a little greeting card. I'll do some sort of a calligraphic treatment of type down here to wish somebody a Merry Christmas, and there is yet another technique for your...
Okay. This next one, I think we can skip. You can do it later. But what I did was I took a piece of a hymn from I think it was a Christmas music book from a vintage store or something, and actually collaged it on one side. And then I did a treatment. I think I'll fast forward it if I can a little bit so you can see. This is something that takes a little bit longer. And I think you probably want to do the poinsettia, right? Is that the watercolor poinsettia spread? Or, okay. So let's just move forward here a little bit. On the right side, I put a little bit of gold, I think it's a Daniel Smith's gold gesso down on the sketchbook page. So it's metallic looking, but it's gesso. So now I can paint on it. You have to put this on a page in a sketchbook that's got enough substance to it that it's going to allow you to put wet media on it, or it's going to buckle all up. But this one's one of the mixed media sketchbooks, and so it definitely had enough body to it. And by the time I put that gesso on, it worked beautifully. So then I penciled in or transferred on my design and started painting on it. On the left side, I painted both with gouache, I believe, and regular watercolor. When you watch this, I of course tell you all those things, but you kind of illuminate the sides of the hymn, and then on the right side, where'd it go? So it pops back up here. No. Okay, so then I actually put some of the flowers right on top of that hymn, trying to get it to go just a little bit further. And I'll just play it because I think what's going to happen here is it's going to transition into the next video, but I'm not positive. It's been a while, 2 years. But having that light coat of gesso, just enough that I can still see the hymn underneath, and then be able to paint on top of it works really well, just for another interesting treatment. And I picked up flowers from one of the florography books that talked about the Christmas season, but were not necessarily so familiar to us. It's not a poinsettia or an amaryllis. It's other things that also mean, in other cultures or in other times, they also mean Christmas. And just a little bit further here.
In this segment, which as it turns out is a winter wonderland outside my studio, we're going to talk a little bit about lettering. Not to make this a class on lettering, because that's not what we're talking about today, but we are talking about stories. And so I wanted to talk about a way to maybe make your words sort of match the story. And so here's the first example. This was the Amaryllis euphorbia poinsettia page, a lot of red, but I wanted to bring in some gold. And so I picked up the type style, used the type style that I saw in this Night Before Christmas, this vintage edition of The Night Before Christmas, this type style. So I sort of picked that up, but added gold to it, and then did handwriting on the sides that told the stories. So that was one example of some type.
And that's where we're going next.
On the next example that I'm going to use, in this example, I've used a couple of different typefaces. This one sort of folkloric, and then copied some type I saw on a Christmas card, a vintage Christmas card from the late 30s. And then on this side, a more modern day type of script. And then we'll come back to this in just a moment. On this example, I created some type based on a Christmas card that I had seen. And it does have some gold on it. And so I'm just right now about to put some gold leaf on the type. I put some adhesive on those two initial caps to begin with. And I'm just going to very carefully grab a piece of this gold leaf. This is actual gold leaf. If I could get my very cold fingers to work and get a piece of this. And then I'll lay that down. Here's a piece that's loose. I'll just gently lay this over those letters. And then this is a piece of very soft pre-felt from another of my loves, the felting world. I've kind of balled that up, and I'm just going to rub that very gently over the adhesive and applied gold leaf. And then
our conversation earlier about Jerry's pink stuff, that's what I used here. But there's other formulations if you find that you like them and they work and don't want to bother with trying to find Jerry's pink stuff. It's just will work just as well. Whatever you use, you put it down on that letter, the M and the C in this case, with a brush you don't care about, because you can get it out, but it's probably never going to be the same as it was before you put gold leaf size on it. And then by using a brush, you can get it in there pretty specifically so that when you go to put this gold leaf on, and you'll see here in a minute, it will only stick there, and you have these beautiful real gold letters. So this is just one of the things you could do with that card you would have just made. So here.
And once I feel like that's stuck on, I can rub gently with either this or a brush, and the unadhered pieces will come off, and it should just leave the initial caps covered in gold, which it looks like it has done quite nicely. And so then at this point, I can continue on with inking the rest of it and adding a little bit of red embellishment. Now, if I rub any harder, I'm going to remove that, and I actually should have waited a little bit longer, but you can see that that worked quite well. So that type will sort of match what's happening here, and I was going for something like this. And then on this example here, I'm actually using a neoclassic illuminated round letter, neoclassical style round letter initial cap, somewhat like what you might find in a book of hours. I'm doing this because I'm trying to get a feel for where I'm headed in my final project, which will be the Holly and the Ivy done like illuminated manuscript, but in a more, I'd say a little more modern, a little more contemporary way. So I have a paintbrush here. It's a 4-aught. It's a Grumbacher. I don't think you'll be able to match this, but 4-aught in my mind, at least in this example, means less than 4 hairs because it's not got many. And I'm working really small, so I have that tiny brush because what I'm doing is I'm going to go in and put this background green in prior to gold leafing the L and painting the flourishes. But I'm doing this in a way where I'm just basically making one line at a time of the green. It's just plain green watercolor, trying to sort of match this side. And I'll come back in and go the opposite direction to increase the opacity. It is a very transparent color. It's viridian, so it would take a lot to get it to be totally opaque, and I don't even really care that it be that. But the idea is to put it on in a very, very slow manner. This is something that would be done typically over, sitting. I would do this during the night. In the evening, probably just sit and work on this a little bit at a time. But you can see a second coat. I'm going to go all the way around, but the second coat you can see does render it darker and more, less translucent or transparent.
So the only reason—
Once I have the green on, I'll go back in and do the flourishes, as I said. The lettering will probably be done in gold leaf. And then a lot of blues and greens and purples to pick up this. And then I'll use a calligraphy pen and India ink to do the story, which I've already drawn my lines to indicate where that will be. And I'm basically here just going to be talking about legends in general, how they are established, how they come about, but in particular, the herbs, like lavender, rosemary, juniper, the herbs and flowers, lady's bedstraw, that are have attribution in relation to the manger and the cradle that Jesus was placed in or on.
So the only reason I brought these up is if you're, working on these different projects and you want some ideas about how to turn them into a card or elaborate on them in your sketchbook, then you have a lot of material to work with. So I'm going to skip through this because it would only be useful to you at the moment if you were working on that page. But do watch it because it'll be great for later. So let's see what happens here. I'm leading up to... I'm also going to include an extra video this side over here with that pine cone. That came from a lesson. I think it was like the third session of those nature sketchbook clubs that were 6 weeks long. It's old, but I thought I'd pop it in there because you could do that too. So you'll get another video to watch later. Let's just see what happened. Okay, so this is talking about that page that we're going to create next, which is this big spread. So let's let it play that out, and then we'll go ahead and switch over.
And in this case, when I'm talking about how to say the stories or tell the stories, in this case, when I'm trying to talk about the stories behind all the Christmas plants and holiday botanicals, a lot of them come from everything from vintage Christmas cards to things I've seen online. So on this spread, it was bent more towards the scientific illustration, a little more real, not as specific as some botanical artists might get, of course. This is just a sketchbook, but I point to the names of the different parts of the poinsettia and tell the story about euphorbia and also amaryllis in watercolor. That was one expression of my ideas that I'd seen and thought of and wanted to explore. We played a little bit with this idea of blotted ink drawings, and I love the imagery that comes from that. It's a little more contemporary, whimsical, but still, for me, leans towards the vintage cards I see. And so I picked up some of the type from one of the vintage cards that I have. Is the type perfect? No, far from it. There's a lot of mistakes, and it's just not professional looking, but it's okay. It was an exploration. I put some gold leaf on there, and I actually really like the way that this one turned out, and I did it on a little mixed media card so I can mail that to somebody. Here's a couple other explorations we've talked about. Again, the blotted ink drawing, but I brought in some folkloric type and also some of the vintage type from cards. And just going to call that one done. Same with this. Put in a very more modern typeface and a very loose rendition of a pine cone. No story there, except that I know the story. And for me, when I see this, I am reminded about the stories behind the pine cone and its relationship to the birth of Christ. And then even more so about the birth of Christ in the manger and the different legends and folklore around that, including a little description about what a legend is. Stories from the past that are believed by many people but cannot be proved to be true. That's from Webster's dictionary, but in relationship to the herbs and plants that were used and spoken of over the many, many centuries about the birth of Christ. So this is, again, a very vintage approach. I put a little illuminated manuscript versal in here for the letter L. Explored a little bit of that because in my mind, the idea that I have that I really want to explore is a much larger spread in the manner of a book of hours, somewhat like this book we talked about earlier, that's a modern day version of the very, very old medieval books of hours, and executed by an icon writer who's got a very good sense about both illuminated manuscripts and icons. Now mine won't be like that because I don't have all that skill set behind me, but I can sort of hint at it in my spread. So what I've done is taken all of those little bits and pieces that I've been collecting along the way, including a very, very old piece of sheet music for the holly and the ivy, which is the thing that I want to explore on my spread. I picked up a spread that had an unfortunate mishap from a page before where the paint seeped through, but it sort of looks like a blotted ink drawing to me, and it could become holly and ivy in a border. You can see that my page has been gridded and marked out in a manner that is used by calligraphers and those who try to emulate illuminated manuscripts. It's sort of over the many, many centuries become a way of dividing up space. And so I've included in the attached PDFs and instructional materials a graph paper grid of this. But essentially what you do is you start at the gutter and go to one corner, and then do that again over here, and where those, let's see, so those go across this way, and then you take this corner and go from the whole page and across the whole page here, and you begin to end up with intersection points. So when you've made this cross and this cross, you have a point here, and the same on this side. When you've made this cross and this one, you get a point here, and then when you've got those points, you can draw your margins. It sets up the margins and the space in a way that was formed many, many years ago. Monks in cells writing the Bible over and over again had this manner of dividing up their space, and the versals would go in these little quadrants here. So with that in mind, I took my elements. There's a lot of the scroll work from a book of hours, but I incorporated pieces of ivy and pieces of holly and some berries and even some hellebores. And then my type will be a versal H and a versal I. and then the calligraphy that would go with that particular style of illuminated cap for initial cap. And then, as I said, I would turn this into a border of holly and ivy. Now, mine has deviated somewhat from the prescribed notion of space. This should actually be up to here, and I might move it over, but I like the conjunction of this and this, these two elements, and so I might just leave that space open and not have it be in the prescribed marginal format. The reason they left these large margins is there was actually marginalia that made the notes, visual notes about what was going on in here, because this typically would have been in Latin, and then nobody could read it. So in this day and age, I can deviate from that. I can do what I want because it's my sketchbook page. I may put the story of the holly and the ivy here, or maybe just the words from that very old Christmas carol. So my next step will be to transfer my design onto my pages, and then I'll just start working on them. I intend to use watercolor, gold leaf, and colored pencil, possibly even some regular ink. On the lettering that I did on this card, I did use an acrylic ink by FW and my pen to do the lettering here, because I wanted it to look like it belonged with the blotted ink drawing, where I used ink in both the color and in the outline. So I need to be mindful when I pick what media I'm going to use, that the pieces and parts all work together. I probably wouldn't want to use something that's terribly bright and not conventional. Probably not a marker, for instance, on this page, because I'm going to be using gold leaf, which is expensive and it's beautiful, and it just doesn't seem to work well with some of the less expensive media. And the subject matter itself kind of lends itself to using the best.
So I'm going to just say that is what's in that other video. It actually shows me doing all that work. Not meant for you to sit and meticulously follow along, but it gives you that background, and it also gives you some more of my thinking behind design and why I left spaces the way I left them and why I incorporated different media. You know, I don't like mixing. There's something about gold leaf. It's royal, you know, and I just don't feel like I want to mix something modern with it, or something that's doesn't pay homage to the page. So anyway, I don't know how important all that is to you, but this is just my thinking. So let's stop this one and see if you need a break. And then I think we have plenty of time to do, or at least get very well started on the Euphorbia poinsettia page. That one was done with watercolor and more conventionally. So if you can get some water, if you've already got your images of the two, amaryllis and poinsettia printed out, that would be great. You might want some tracing paper so you can transfer your design. What else? Paintbrushes, of course, and patience, and we'll at least get started on it. And so
Lori,
maybe,
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You know that Daniel Smith gold gesso?
Yes.
Could you take, so I have gesso and I have that gold fine tech. Could you take that fine tech and mix it in, or would it be too thin?
Well, you can find out for us and let us know, because I don't
Well, I'll
know.
try.
I mean,
before I
it would
waste
make
it, I thought
sense.
I'd ask. Huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think
It might work.
it might.
Well, I could do a little bit of it and just
Yeah.
do a sample and see if it's before I waste a lot of it. Yeah.
You know, for some reason I bought it twice. I have two gigantic tubs of it, and I don't know what I should just mail some to you guys.
Oh,
It's
no,
so much.
I'll try that. I'll try that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank
All
you.
right.
All right.
So let's see, what time is it? Let's come back at 3:05. Take a little break and come back. You can get set up and ready to go. And I'll just stay right here for questions in case you need me.
Lori, I really like that blotting technique. I like to make cards, and I love the look of that. And I went on Amazon, I ordered some deli paper, so I'm eager for that to come. I don't have those inks, but I'm thinking maybe Brusho would be good.
Brusho would be great. Yeah, definitely. It's got that same vibrancy.
Yeah.
I
What a
think that's
great
important.
idea.
Yeah.
I have brush. I love that. Thank you.
That's great. Very, very good. Yeah, those inks were something that we used in the graphic arts field years and years and years ago. And it was used primarily because, you know, you would paint a fashion illustration, for instance, and it photographs beautifully, but it's very transient. So in, you know, several years, it's pastel. It's so it's not, I mean, maybe they've changed the formulations nowadays, but it's really not meant to be something that you paint with for into posterity. It's you know, it's got its purpose. The colors are luscious. I think some of those new watercolor inks are coming in are probably the baby, you know, grandchildren of that stuff. You know, things that you could use besides. Trying to think what else would work. Some of the watercolor. I'll think about it. There's a formulation, not the liquid acrylic. There is a formulation of watercolor. I see people buying their little plastic jars, tube jars.
There's the hydrous watercolors.
Yes, those. Yeah. I think those might be similar. You know, they're bright. Highly pigmented. That's what you're looking for. Highly pigmented medium.
Great. Thank you, Lori.
Sure. Catherine, did you get is your drawing dry? Your little ink blot? Is it? Are you putting color on it? Are you gonna wait?
I'm printing out the other stuff, and then what I was actually going to do is, since it kind of turned out weirdly using the wax paper, I mean, I got some, you know, transfer.
Oh, but it's not bad.
It's not bad, but what I thought I'd do then is use my pearlescent colors all over it to test them out to see what they actually end up looking like, because then I'll have a
great
that shows me the colors and stuff. So I'm
great
gonna
idea.
And right now I'm printing out the poinsettias and the amaryllis. So
I think what you'll find, I think what I'll find, because I'm playing this 2 years later, is that I didn't necessarily use one image or another. I used parts and pieces in that holly. I mean, in the poinsettia especially. I think none of them were really full. The images that I had, they were partial. So I probably took a piece of this and a piece of that to make it up.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find the amaryllis.
It might have been posted last night in separate, not in the resource file. I might have put it on.
I'm looking.
Not sure.
I'll go back to the resources. I think it might be in there because
it's not with the new ones.
I'm not seeing, no, unless it's, oh wait, here's resources. Let me look. I have a really fun idea that I want to do for a spread comparable to like what you did, but I'll lay it out and work on it. I don't know how long it'll take me to do, but I'll send it to you.
I'd love to see
stuff, because I think it'll work out really nicely. Gosh, I am not seeing any amaryllis on.
Okay.
Oh wait, I got one. Here I go.
Okay.
Yeah, found it. Okay, got it. Okay.
I got into that file last night, and I looked at what it was in the resources, which I thought I had put everything in there, and I started scrolling down, finding more and more stuff, and then I got confused. Like, is it in the resources? Is it not? And so you may have doubles.
It's there. I think it was in maybe the earlier one.
Probably.
And I'm printing them out a little bit smaller so they fit in my sketchbook. So.
Yeah. That was in my really long, skinny one.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's not a very big book.
I have a notebook I got specifically for this whole Secret Garden series, but I've been using this other notebook for everything so far.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I'll have to see.
Yeah, that happens. I started looking around, and I probably have 50 sketchbooks around here, and there's a drawing in this one, a drawing in that one. Just they're all over the place. And then I find stuff that I was looking for last week, and it's in another one.
I really like your hair too. It looks really cute.
So. Right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought maybe the old 2 years ago.
Oh, good grief.
Well, thank you.
Give me a break. Or I'm going to run and get a couple things off the printer and stuff.
All right. I think I need sugar. I think I need candy, so I'll be back in a minute too. I'm gonna go get sugar. I've been making a new kind of cookie every night and freezing them so that I'll have enough for the cookie plates that I make for everybody. And it's dangerous because there's cookies all over in the house now.
That would be dangerous for me.
Hey, Lori, when you said to make a collage of the hymn, what do you have? I mean, I was kind of looking that up on the internet. Do you have how to do collages? I mean, I don't quite know what you mean by that.
Yeah. So in that case, it's not really technically a collage, but I just adhered it to this page ahead of time. I think I probably used one of the many. Oh, hang on a second. I'll grab it. So Golden makes all kinds of mediums for this purpose. This is not necessarily the one, but this is the brand. They come like this. They're meant to be an adhesive, but also they coat the paper
What
to
is
build
it
up.
called? What is it called?
This one's not. This is not the one I used. It's a gel medium, golden gel medium. This one's soft gel. This is not the one I used. But if you can also just use Mod Podge. It's got a matte finish to it, which is more desirable than some of the golden ones have sort of a sheen. But it's basically glue. It's a little liquidier. It's
So it's just glue. Okay.
yeah, but you paint it down and it prepares the surface to do other things to it. And on that one page, the one with the lavender and all the herbs and stuff, if you note up above the hymn, there's also some tissue paper, a colored tissue paper that I had taken and sort of rumpled up and made it and then adhered it into that gluey stuff. And it made it look kind of old, like torn paper. Before we are done, I'll find the right golden medium. Because I'd love to have you have the right thing. Hang on. It's a golden medium called Gel Matte. That's one of them. But there's many formulations. Catherine, did you go to that golden thing that Charlene told us about?
I've gone to
Or
several
Roma?
of them, or at least signed up for them, so I got the recordings. But the first one I went to for a little while, and man, it was loaded with information.
I know there's so much.
I never knew
It's
acrylics.
over the top.
Yeah, acrylics is like, it feels like, there's just so much. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. So but it's nice she gives the videos and stuff because there's a lot of really good information in those.
And I have a lot of them. There's some that have some consistency to them. So if you wanted some different levels on your paper, surfaces that are up or down or whatever, not saying this very well, but there's mediums for that. Roma, have you gone to some of those?
I went to that, but it was totally over my head because
Yeah.
I've never used acrylic, and I was at the level of, do you use a wet brush?
I know.
I didn't know anything at all. But what I did learn from it is if I ever get to the point where I'm needing to mix media in or have that's where I'll go, is to their website and explore.
Yeah.
It was a really good presentation.
Well, I've got several of these. I've got a number of these. I've got soft gel and things with more viscosity to them, and just a variety. But you can just, like I said, you could just use Mod Podge from Michaels just to stick that paper, that hem down with. It works. All right. As soon as we're ready here, we'll give it another couple minutes, and then we'll start the last one. I think it was 30 minutes or something, so we should be fine. I'm just mesmerized by that river and how high it is. I swear, this is the highest I've ever seen it.
The one by you?
Yeah, it's really high. And when we first started, Aroma came on, I just happened to look up and I saw somebody rafting.
Oh my goodness.
Nuts. I would never do that. Not right now. I mean, it's roaring.
Which river is it?
Hmm?
Which river is it?
It's the Middle Fork of the Snoqualmie.
Wow.
Did you guys get tons of rain?
Last week, and then it snowed a bunch up above, a few, 17 miles up from us.
Oh.
And now it's warmed up again, and so it's melting. So, and it's not warmed up, it's still pretty cold, but it's warmer than it was.
Yeah, we had a Pineapple Express come through and it dumped a ton of rain.
It's 46, that's why. And it's 80% chance of rain today. So
welcome to winter, huh?
Yeah, in a big way. It also has been getting dark at 3:30 here in the forest. All right, we're going to start pretty quick here. Let's see, Sherry, I know you're there, but Bobby, are you there? I want to make sure before. I know I said 3:05, so we can wait a little bit longer. You're there. Okay.
I'm back, yes.
Well, let's go ahead then. Let's pick up that next video. Oh, I always forget this. I have to wait until I've escaped and then do it. Hang on. Escape. I should close that one. I'm getting there. There's a lot of windows open. All right, this is the one. And too many tabs in my brain open too, so pardon me while we fiddle around here. That one. And then YouTube. It's on YouTube. All right. Oh, hummingbird right there. Holy cow, that's a really close view. Poor thing must be really cold. Okay, here we'll blow it up. Maybe. And come back to the start. All right. No volume. What's happening? Sharing the sound. Where's the sound? Maybe it got turned off over here. Ah. Uh-oh. That's interesting. My goodness. Okay, sorry. I'm going to stop it and go see why I don't have volume on this one. How can this be? Well, shoot. Let's see if it's my computer. Nope. Let's try it without being in YouTube. I'm just trying it behind the scenes here to see if it has volume on. that one does. I don't know why it doesn't in YouTube. All right, let's try this again. Nope, not that. Good Lord, so sorry. Share screen, the YouTube one. Yes, and now here.
It started painting finally. This
Volume.
is the palette that I'm going to work with. I have all my greens. I probably won't use all of them, but I've got them out. I've got the Viridian Green Apatite Genuine. This is Perylene Green, Sap Green. This is Phthalo Green, Blue Shade, and Terravert. So
use whatever greens you have, in other words.
I'll move these aside so they're not in our way. That's the greens. My reds so far are Anthracanoid Red, Organic Vermilion, Cadmium Red Medium Hue. I cannot find my Opera Pink tube, but this, trust me, this is Opera Pink. This is the Hansa Yellow Light I spoke of earlier. So those we can put away. I also found my quinacridone coral. I think I'll stick some of that out.
This is all just to say I put out all my reds and all my greens.
And
just for sports.
got a couple others here that I'm going to stick out just in case. Don't really need to be adding anything new, but I thought maybe this rose of ultramarine would be handy at some point. We'll see. And that's probably all I'm going to put out. Oh, French ochre. We need French ochre. See if I can get the tube lid back on. And a little French ochre.
Yellow ochre works.
And I think we're good to go.
So a yellow, Hansa Yellow
This
Light, yellow
really
ochre,
old
some
tube.
reds and some greens.
There we go. So we're going to work on a poinsettia just to get us loose. This is just one way to kind of enter into where we're headed today. And so on my,
Oops, sorry.
that's the, which one is Pentalic sketchbook with watercolor paper. I have a collection of watercolor brushes, and I've kind of gotten a head start here. I have my image in front of me that's a poinsettia, but I'm not following it super. I'm not being too dear about this. I'm trying to just be loose. So what I've been doing is
there's the
finding
image
one
I was
leaf
sort
at
of
a time,
following
not
right
one
there.
that's touching a wet one, preferably, and getting it wet. I have to just turn my image here a little bit to match what I'm looking at. So this is a green one. So I'm just going to get it wet. The entire, ooh, there's something in it. My brush has something yellow in it, which is fine because that leaf's kind of yellow. And I need a rag.
So I just put water on one of the leaves.
Nearby.
Just pick a leaf,
And I'm
any
gonna
leaf.
pick up, let's just use that green apatite. Works well, mixed maybe with a little bit of Viridian.
If you don't have green apatite, you could use sap green or undersea green probably would work also. But the reason I picked that green apatite is it has granulating characteristics, meaning that some of the particles are heavier than others and they go to the bottom and some sift to the top, and so they separate. It just makes a nice effect, but you could use sap green. And I've wet one entire leaf, pick a leaf, any leaf, and I'm about to add green into it.
So that it's kind of nice blue, dark blue green. And
okay,
drop that
cascade
in
green. That would be better, cascade.
I'm not really trying to be too close to the reference image. Just kind of dropping it in where I see that it's darker. Letting it do what it's going to do, and then I love the sap green for these leaves. And yeah, there's veins and all kinds of stuff, but I'm just being loose about this one. So I'm going in the direction of those veins and making the pattern that it makes, but I'm not trying to be specific about my reference photo and this picture. Now I see I'm not really focusing you guys in here very well, so let's shift this a little bit. so you can see. All right. So on the next leaf, this is a leaf, even though it looks like it's part of the flower because it's red, it's a leaf. And it's very vibrant red. And so I'm going to move down to this one because it's not touching something wet. So that is a red one as well. Getting the entire thing wet and bringing cad red medium hue in there.
And that's the red we typically use, that cad red medium hue for our red, our warm red.
Letting it travel. It's a vibrant color. I see areas where it's lighter and some areas it's darker. I'm going to bring some of that organic vermilion, which is kind of orangey.
And you could use pyrrole orange.
Lighter. And again, I'm not trying to be specific, so I'm just getting some veinage. You know, the pattern of the veins is this way. I want to put in some really dark, which for me at this time is the Paroline Maroon.
You could use a Lizard Crimson or Burnt Sienna or the two to mix together. So I'm going to stop it there just so you can play a little bit. In each case, both in that first leaf and then in this red leaf, because they're not the flower petals, they're actually the leaf, I got the whole thing wet. The entire section was wet. And I worked on one that wasn't touching anything else that was wet so that I could drop in cadmium red in this case and let it just kind of bleed in. And then I let some of the lighter areas, I put in a little different color, but I also went back in with a thirsty brush and sucked some of the color out if I didn't want it to be so bright in an area. And then I went in with just made some little strokes, knowing full well they're gonna, because it's wet, disappear probably. But at least I started with lines in that sort of signified those veins or parts of the veins. So go ahead and do one or two of those, and then we'll move forward. I'm not following that image over there on the left to really exact, and in fact, I think it was twisted a little bit, maybe to the right or something, because the leaves aren't lining up here. It looked like it was probably twisted 45 degrees. Would that be like a quarter of a turn to the right? And these go pretty quickly. So I'll wait another minute or two and then move on, just because it's the same thing for each of these petals or leaves. I just had to make really sure that I waited for one next to something to dry before I painted right next to one. And you're lucky because there's a whole bunch of them, so you can just kind of keep moving and doing every other one and get quite a ways before you run into all of them are wet. So I was really trying hard not to list exactly the colors, just to kind of throw out which, if they were warm or cool, basically. A warm green, a cool green, because I hate when you have to feel like you have to run out and get the colors. You can do this with whatever you've got on hand. for those green leaves, I used something like a sap green and then something darker. Either maybe just if you just didn't have anything else, you could add French ultramarine blue into your sap green or something, or a little indigo into your sap green to get that darker color. And then I had a warm and a cool red and a yellow, basically. I'm going to go ahead and move it forward just because it's going to be very repetitive.
Just kind of dropping it in. I like it at the tip here. I like it up underneath this other one.
See how I'm darkening underneath petals, so there's just a little shadow, and I'm using a maroon, but you could use
go where it wants to.
Alizarin crimson probably would work well.
Loose and free. This is just to get me warmed up, basically. Another red one here. It's not touching anything, so we can play here. And Cad red medium hue.
See how it runs?
Travels.
It really travels far.
And I think on this one I'm going to take a little bit of buff titanium, which I didn't tell you I was going to put out. I just need to find it on my giant palette. And I'm going to put a little bit of buff titanium around the outer edge of this and let it travel inward.
Buff titanium is basically a white-ish tan.
Here.
I don't use it a lot, but because some of those leaves got a pinky tinge sometimes, it kind of works to get you that pinky tinge. There's other ways you could do that just with
and I'll
water.
Progress that way around. I've got a couple more little unfurling leaves in here that are much darker. So let's put one of them in with the Cad red medium hue. And then drop in that deep dark Paraline maroon.
So I'm working on one of these petals. It probably is this one far on the far left here, but I'm putting it in on the right, where they're sort of folded up still, and they're really in a lot of deep shadow. So they're more just red and alizarin crimson plus indigo or something, or burnt sienna, something for a shadow. And so here's what's going to happen. I'm just really darkening that up on that one side. Seems like one side's more darker shadowed than the other in each of the cases. There I'm putting in veins, sort of. They're going to disappear because it's wet, but it just gives a hint. See, that titanium white kind of marbleizes the paint. You could have just used
this one. I'm going right up next to something.
You could have used just plain water to get your pink, but that titanium has some kind of a quality to it that makes the other colors repel, and so it kind of gives an interesting effect, a ripply effect. So if you're trying to paint a poinsettia that's pink and white, that'd be a great color to use to help get that
thing I just did. So I'm going to try and leave a little margin there that won't allow the reds and greens.
Did somebody have a question? No?
To mingle, but you know what? If they mingle, it's not going to hurt anything because some of the leaves, like this one here, are red and green in the same leaf.
There's a lot of water there. Look how far that travels. But that's what's given that effect, very painterly. And I'm coming back with a thirsty brush, kind of sucking some of the color back out where I want it to be a little more highlighted. But this is another very loose approach. Very appropriate for a sketchbook. You don't have to make a very meticulous botanical drawing here. This is meant to be a suggestion. And let your brush work for you. It can make very fine points if you lift it up. You can make big, thicker strokes by putting pressure down. You know that, but it's kind of a one and done. And once you put that watery,
and so I think that's probably enough to indicate poinsettia. I'm going to go back on some of these that are dry and put in a little more color and add some more of an orangey red here, a little more of that.
So I'll stop it for a minute. One of the reasons that I do more color, I don't want to go back in and mess with it. So the only reason I would go back in is because, especially reds, they tend to really fade when they dry. and I want this to be bright. So I do have to go back, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go back in a way that I'm also just hitting it with color and getting out of there. I'm not going to muck around in there because before you know it, it's lost its life. Let me just, I have to quickly do something. My groceries are ready and I have to tell them that somebody's coming. Sorry, but you can paint a leaf for a second. Here. There you go. Okay. All right. So let's run it. I want to make sure you get to see what I did for those inner berries and some of the other things before we run out of time.
Organic vermilion. And some of these, like probably this one could be a little orangier.
But see, it's wet, so I'm still just dropping color. And that orange really does pop it.
And I think I want some of that in here.
The shininess makes
my lighting is shifting in here, so it may not show like it does in real life, but it's added quite a little pop.
There you go. See, you can kind of see
some of these, and you can always add that.
So right in that area right there where I just popped that orange in, it's shiny. I realize that, and the camera's reflecting and stuff, so it's probably more difficult to see, but it really adds pop. If you don't have a good orange, and if you happen to have opera pink, that's another really juicy color that just, if you add some of that, boy, it lights up. It's just really lovely. So those are some little tricks to make it really vibrant.
Pink. So probably enough for here, but my intention is then to go in and write to call out that this is a leaf and that that's a bract, or, name the pieces and parts of them scientifically. I've got the scientific name, Euphorbia, not finished with it. It's Pulcherrima, I think. Euphorbia. Euphorbias I have a little bit of fear about because I'm deadly allergic to them. So no EpiPen present, but at least there's no real poinsettia in the room. The sap, the white sap, is actually what they make latex from, which I'm also allergic to. The Euphorbia family is quite large. There are a lot of euphorbias, and some of them are more, I'm more allergic to than others. But anyway, a little side note there. On this side, I'm going to work on some amaryllis in much the same way. I'll get one going here, but then I have another little project I want to work on today as well. So here's my reference. And in order to do this and make sense of it, I actually have to turn this way. Let's see. Think about this.
Always a challenge.
This way. And we'll see if it still shows on camera here for you.
This is the problem with a long sketchbook.
As always, my lines are much darker than I ever would do in the real world, but for the sake of this demonstration, they have to be so that you can see.
So I transferred that on there quite large. It's almost edge to edge, my design. You could put it on there in whatever size. And again, I'm having to work kind of cockeyed and sideways because that sketchbook is so long it wouldn't fit on camera. So I've twisted it. The image is up here in the upper left, the one that I'm using, but it doesn't, I don't think I have it twisted the way it is in the sketchbook, which is going to be tricky. And again, I would have taken a kneaded eraser and knocked some of that back. It's awfully, awfully dark. I don't typically have my pencil drawing that dark, but I had to so that you could see it. So here we go.
And so I'm going to work on this area to begin with. I'm going to pull out, I'm going to get this area very wet, but I'm trying to avoid the little yellow, I guess it's stamens, they're pollen filled, sort of like a lily. I want those to be yellow, and I'm trying to save them. So I'm not going to paint in that area.
Painting water around
I'm
them.
going to use much the same approach as I have here. And just drop in color. These are pretty dark and intense up in this area. So I'm starting with that Paraline maroon, going around the little stamen. and dropping in towards the center where I see some amount of line work. So I'll let that kind of happen. And then I'm picking up the more orangey red for the back half here, again going around the stamen. That's probably not the stamen. I probably got that word wrong.
It's just like an iris, those little pollen-filled things.
I think it's an anther.
Oh, there you go. That's what it
A
is.
little pollen-filled yellow thing. I'm trying to avoid at all cost.
So that's just 2 colors. You could use alizarin. I use that Paroline maroon, but and then cad
So
red
let
medium.
that kind of mingle and find a different area to play in.
So I have to pick an area that's not next to that.
See, this one's not touching anything, so we can come over here and do this one. And start off there, but I do need I'm saying I need a much orangier red. Now I could probably just mix a little Hansa yellow light in there to get that. There we go. Let's see how that looks. And the very tip of this one's also got a little white, so I'm going to stay out of it.
It's just a lot of juicy color. Let it float back and forth.
Clean
Not
back a little bit. Some
picking
line
up.
work.
Picked up some of the paint with my thirsty brush to leave some
Let's
clean
find one that's
light
not
highlights.
touching anything. So I had to change the orientation here so that I could be in the same, aligned it with my image on my computer.
Yeah, it's hard enough to paint something.
CAD red medium hue, just dropping it in, letting it go where it wants to go, and it's going to try and travel around those little yellow bits, hopefully. Seems to be doing so.
So the process is the same all the way through this. Just pick a petal, observe your reference image, paint around things that are yellow, but use 1 or 2 colors of red. And don't try to be too specific. Be loose. I know it's hard. It's very hard to be
so on this petal
loosey-goosey.
in particular, I'm going to do 2 passes, and I'm going to do that because I see that there's some the part of the anther or pistil or whatever those bits are called that has the stem end of it is lighter than all the rest of the petal. So this red will take care of the stem end of those parts. The second pass will take care of the shadowing in that petal.
So what I'm talking about here, I just spilled water in my mouth. I just spilled a bottle of water in my mouth. So let's see if it works. Right up here under those yellow bits, there's these little stems that hold those yellow bits, and they're the lighter orange color. So if you paint this first pass in that lighter orange color, let it dry, then you can come back and paint around those with a little darker color, and it'll set them apart. So see down in here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's dark shadow in this triangle, for instance, and then there's a stripe of the stamen or the stem, and then another dark color. You could paint those in after. You're just setting up that back, the first layer of that petal. This thing is twisted a little to the right, maybe, twisted like 20, 30 degrees to the right, the image in the left corner of your computer now, and you'll line up better with where I'm at. Let's see where we're at time-wise. Oh, we have 3 minutes. So I'm just going to let it run till 3:30. Then we'll say goodbye, and I'll tell you all that you'll have, and you can ask questions then.
This little grain marks, the streaks that I see on this pass. And I'm going to jump around and hit some of the others that are dry now.
Always the same process though. Get it wet and drop in some color. This shouldn't take you very long. You could, I'll put these videos up right away when we're done today. I'll put them on Padlet. You could sit and finish them tonight, before dark, unless you live here, and then it's dark. Bobby, we're coming to Peoria in, well, December 27th through 30th. I can't wait to see my daughter and grandbabies and get warm.
Yeah, get warm. We'll have good weather for you.
Yeah. Yay. So there, I believe, yeah, I just picked up a little green. And what I did that for, that's not green in that area necessarily, but it neutralized the red and it darkened it. So there was a little bit of shadow where part of this amaryllis is not quite yet all the way unfolded or opened. So I made shadow by adding some of my green. I didn't have to add any more colors to my already full palette. And now that one that we were talking about is dry enough, I can come back in. I'm doing that right now. I'm putting shadow, which I made with green. Maybe I added a little of the Paraline maroon or alizarin crimson, but I'm putting in the space between those sticks that hold the yellow things. The scientifics, my scientific verbiage. Sorry, Catherine, you could probably say the real words for me. But and then, oh, here, this is something I want you to see here. What I just did, and I'll have to get us out of the way to back it up because this is kind of important if you've not done this before. I took my brush. I'm going to back it up just about here. I took my brush and I grabbed it at the ferrule and kind of splayed the bristles out so they're like this, and then streaked through, and it made lines, a whole bunch of them right next to one another in the area that I was trying to do that. So let's just see if I can show you that again here. I think, okay, splayed it out and then drew down, and it's hard to see, but because it's wet, it's not very distinct, but it's a great way to get lines or veins or directionality into something, even though you're trying to be loose. And I only did it twice, so it wasn't like I sat and meticulously drew every little line. I just hinted at it. And then I think I should stop because it's really, it's not very useful to watch it really fast and have me blah, 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 blah it all out. Fire hose, sorry, but there's a lot of information. I hope that that you'll continue to paint and that you'll do the other projects. I think this one even goes to another. I alluded to that fact. Let's just see here. Scoot forward. Oh no, I'm still painting it. So I'll walk you all the way through this whole thing. And it's, the lettering's already there. And I think I had originally, when I was setting this demonstration up, I did that so you could see why I left a space and how I was thinking and the plan. Sometimes you can artfully work your type right on around a floral element. Yeah, so that's it finished. Let's escape out of this. And then I'm open to all questions. I'll stop share. Oh, why is it all of a sudden? Well, I can't stop sharing. I can't stop sharing. I lost my little bar. It's covered up by something. Ah, here we go. Okay. So sorry for all the little weird things that happened today. Everything that could go wrong did. But hopefully you have enough that you can paint all kinds of beautiful botanicals and are inspired and have lots of resources. And I'd love it if you could post what you do on Padlet. I left you each one of you a little space. If you want to share, please do. And if you don't mind, if you could also, when you share, just mention whether I can post it on my website. I have a student gallery and I like to share everybody's work on there because I'm proud of what I see come out of you guys. So I hope that was fun. And are there any questions?
Lori, what's happening in January? What's your January class going to be?
So January is the snow geese.
Yay! Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah.
So I'm offering it again for those who've already had it. It's $10 because you've already paid me before, but it's another one packed full of stuff. We worked on Duralar, so we had those layers.
Yeah,
that was really fun. So we told a story. If it were a flip book, you could see things happening, but it's just the layers that you add on there just show how more and more geese showed up, and it was really cool when we got to see them. So Catherine and I were just there again, and we got some more pictures. So
Oh, fun. Oh, must have been a fun day.
Yeah, it was. We took Emily, my little sister, for her birthday.
Oh,
Yeah.
Emily. Oh, that's sweet. Well, that'll be fun. I have to say, Lori, watching this, because I was, man, 2 years ago, I didn't know anything. And I was like, oh, I know what she's talking about this time.
Yeah,
That
you kind
was
of walked into this one. Wasn't this one of the very first ones, I
very
think?
first.
Oh,
I
gosh.
was like, I had no clue
Oh,
what wet into wet, dry into. What is she? I just kind of tried to copy what you were doing, but a thirsty brush. This time I'm
yeah,
like,
right.
oh, I know
I
what a
know.
thirsty.
I'm throwing out all these words and I don't even stop to think that
Oh,
but then,
no, it's good. Most people would know that, Lori, because I was really beginner, but it's kind of fun to see that I've grown. It was fun to
yeah,
redo this class and see the growth. So thank you for redoing it.
yeah, sure, absolutely.
So Lori, when you're in churches, do you take out all the hymn books and rip pages out of them?
No, but I do have quite a collection of them. Yeah, yeah, you got to watch me.
Yeah, there she is again.
Whoa, nail everything down. It's either that or I walk out with pieces of glass and come home and do stained glass.
Oh,
And
funny.
those illuminated manuscripts. Don't
Yeah,
take me to
Oh,
forget those.
forget it.
don't take me to the Getty.
They're
Yeah, I was
gone.
gonna say, Getty, watch out, right?
Yeah.
Lord,
Yes.
I love it.
You can spend
That was
you can see where I
fun.
spent my college years, right? Oh, darn it. That's so
Oh, fun. How fun you get to go
Thank
to
you.
see the kids in Arizona,
yeah.
though. I'm having Christmas, and that's so much fun.
Well, and then what's the coolest is my son and my daughter have never brought their kids together. So
Are you
all the
really?
cousins are going to see each other for the first time ever. We're taking all of this
Oh,
bunch there. So
Lori, that will
I
be
know.
so fun.
I know.
Oh,
So
have so much fun.
yeah. All right.
Lori, I
So
Thank
enjoyed
you.
Merry
this so
Christmas.
much. Thank you.
oh, I'm so glad. It was so fun to have you in our class today. And you,
Yeah.
Bobby, thank you so much
Yes,
for
this
coming.
was I learned a lot. So
Oh,
thank you. Yes.
good. Good, good. Okay. I'm going to post everything that we just looked at immediately. In between telling QFC that my husband's in Slough. Poor guy's been sitting there. There, sorry. That was rude. I sent him to go get the groceries and he's been waiting 15 minutes for me to tell him what slot he's in.
Well, everyone have a good holiday and
Yeah,
Yes.
happy
Happy New
holidays.
Year.
And I hope we see you all in
Yeah.
January.
Yeah.
And
All right. Everyone take
all right.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.